away from her, you bitch!
We're history.
Well, that intro clip may be history, but we're not history. This is the Boston Sci-Fi. This is our podcast. And today we're talking about must-see films, sci-fi films of the 80s. And this is a really rich topic. So we got two of our best minds together to help us, Melissa Starker and Alexis Den Boggende. And Alexis, why don't you tell folks what you're doing these days?
Well, doing lots of work on horror stuff, as always, to no one's surprise. Lots of coverage of horror films, sci-fi films, all good stuff. And yeah, looking forward to all the good stuff that's coming out this summer.
You're still writing for the Boston Hassle?
I am indeed, yes.
And in your spare time, you're an executive at Chewy.
Yes, I am. Lots of writing in my world. So.
And Mel, what about you? What's going on?
I am focused on helping with Boston Sci-Fi as assistant director, and happy to say we have our submissions portal open. We are accepting films for next year, and just working with the great team and supporting what you do.
That's all really cool. But let's talk about the 80s sci-fi films. Is there an 80s aesthetic? Is there something that we can start putting our finger and say, this is what makes it good? Because the 80s precede the CGI period and come after the disco period. So they're very, I think it's a very distinct period. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is. When I think of 80s films, I think of this like coming of age, what life was like before, and I know we kind of talked about this in the previous podcast, but like what life was like before you had the entire internet in your pocket, sort of a thing. And that it really kind of resonated with like forming friendships in childhood and taking a peek into the advancement of technology, but we're not quite there yet. So I absolutely love the aesthetic of 80s anything for that reason, for this coming of age nostalgic sort of a vibe.
Mel, what do you think?
Yeah, well, as a child of the 80s, obviously, I have a very strong feeling of connection and nostalgia for that time period. And as we know, the 80s had a very certain aesthetic in terms of fashion, in terms of tech as it was coming about with things like the Walkman, but also thinking about the rise of the summer tentpole picture really started to kind of come into its own in the 80s. And I do feel like, what some of the things that we're talking about tonight is going to reflect that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that one of the other, some of the other things, I think there's this distinctive style, some of it being the clothing as you talked, but there's also the element of simple directed stories. And because CGA had not gotten into creating the stories themselves and working around the CGI, they had to be character driven. And I think that's one of the threads we'll see is character driven. The other thing that I see is a lot of darkness and a lot of lightness with nostalgia and going back. And in the darkness side, our first film is Aliens. And it's a pretty dark film. It's the old, monsters and all that other kind of stuff. But it is also, I think, an element of the Reagan era and some of the paranoia that deals with the Reagan era. Am I a little off with that? Because Melissa, as an 80s girl, you would probably have a better sense of that.
I'm really glad that you brought that up because, as a teenager in the 80s, the threat of nuclear war was very real. I mean, I don't know, I can't obviously say how real it was, but the perception was very much that, we had a hot war going on, even though it was still being called the Cold War. And so I do feel like a film like Aliens and definitely captures that sort of sense of distrust of you're not really sure what's going to happen next. But it also is just, it's a rip-roaring action pick too.
Well, it's a rip-roaring, and to me, it's so female-centric. I mean, obviously female-centric. You mean the two protagonists are female. There's all sorts of iconography of female genitalia throughout the entire thing, and there's eggs and all that kind of stuff. And I think that could never have happened in the 70s, because it just went in the 60s. People wouldn't even know. So it had to be in the 80s where we started doing that, where two powerful females gained center stage. And here's a clip from Aliens, and this clip has Bill Paxton in it.
How long after we're declared overdue can we expect a rescue?
17 days.
17 days? Hey, man, I don't want to rain on your parade. We're not going to last 17 hours. Those things are going to come in here just like they did before, and they're going to come in here, and they're going to come in here, and they're going to get us!
This little girl survived longer than that with no weapons and no training. Right?
Why don't you put her in charge?
You better just start dealing with it, Hudson. Listen to me. Hudson, just deal with it because we need you, and I'm sick of your bullshit. Now, I want you to get on a terminal and call up some kind of floor plan file. Do you understand? Construction blueprints. I don't care. Anything that shows the layout of this place. Are you listening?
Yeah.
I need to see air ducts. I need to see electrical access tunnels, sub-basements, every possible way into this complex. We don't have much time.
Okay. Okay, I'm on it.
Hudson, just relax.
I'm a big Bill Paxton fan, and it was really regrettable that he ended up dying in 2017 after an operation that I actually had. So, it's really kind of too bad. But what is your take when you look at that, Alexis? You're seeing this. You've probably seen the film 1,000 times, but you're seeing that one particular scene that's isolated. What did you pull out of it?
I just love how she just completely takes control and is like, you gotta chill. I just love how powerful Ellen is as a character, especially as a woman. Because I think, like to your point, Garen, I think in 60s, 70s, you're not really seeing that. And then in the 80s, you're seeing some of these really great, strong female characters, whether it be Ellen Ripley or I'm trying to think of some other great ones like Marion in Indiana Jones, or, you get these women that are like, okay, men, take it easy. I'm in control of the situation. And I really love that it's kind of like you know, the traditional role is flipped, where she's like, this is the situation, you need to calm down, this is what we're going to do, and she really just kind of takes control and like redefines a woman's role up until that point. So I love her as a character. And Denora Weaver is just amazing too, in no matter what she's in. So I just really love that kind of like almost flip of the gender, or the traditional gender role.
Mel?
Absolutely. And I think of that other scene where she first takes control and takes that large vehicle and basically crashes it in to save the rest of the crew as much as she can. And it's actually, when you were talking about how strongly female this is, Garen, when I saw a shot of Vasquez, who is another great character in this, a strong woman character in this film, Jeanette Goldstein, the actor who played Vasquez, actually owns and operates a very successful bra store in Los Angeles now. So so the kind of woman-centric thing goes into real life as well.
A bra store?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess
I love that for her. That's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Well, yeah, I can see it, but you know, I'm a guy. What do I know? I mean, seriously, it's all mystery to me. So, all right. So let's now take a little look at the nostalgic side of the '80s, and we're going to take a look at Back to the Future. And here's a clip from Back to the Future.
Doc? Don't say a word. Doc, I don't want to know your name. I don't want to know anything about you. Listen, Doc. Doc. Don't tell me anything. Doc, quiet. Quiet. I'm going to read your thoughts. Let's see now. You come here from a great distance?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't tell me. You want me to buy a subscription to the Saturday Evening Post?
No.
Not a word, not a word, not a word now. Quiet. Donations. You want me to make a donation to the Coast Guard Youth Auxiliary?
Doc, I'm from the future. I came here in a time machine that you invented. Now I need your help to get back to the year 1985.
Do you know what this means? It means that this damn thing doesn't work at all.
Doc, you gotta help me. You were the only one who knows how your time machine works.
Time machine? I haven't invented any time machine.
What a wonderful scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what I took away from that is something that I think is emblematic of a lot of the 80s films, sci-fi films in particular, and that is the sound design. I don't know if you caught the what was going on in the background there. You're basically got a two people going back and forth, but in the background there's this very kind of science fiction, almost 50s kind of thing going
Very
on.
Twilight Zone-y almost.
Yeah, very Twilight Zone-y. And you know, and I go, when I start thinking about other 80s films, the sound design is really solid. It almost is like, because there was no CGI, there's none of that other stuff, then they had to be very creative with it. And so their Foley editors and all those people just did a great job with those films. I mean, you know, what did you take away from this clip, Mel?
First off, that you know, I think a lot of the success of this film rests on Michael J. Fox.
Absolutely,
it's kind of perfect casting. You know, I have a soft spot for him because he's also, aside from just being a total mensch, he is the star of what I think is the most underrated Peter Jackson film, The Frighteners.
Oh gosh, yes, that's a great film. I love that.
Yeah. I just, it's funny when, you know, I was looking at the list for this, and we talked about this a little bit, Garen. Some of these films are definitely ahead of their time, but there's a couple, 3 films on this list are very much of their time.
Exactly.
And I feel like Back to the Future is very much that. Robert Zemeckis was the director, was really in hitting his stride in a major way. It was still a time where original stories like this could get that kind of budget and that kind of support. And I kind of miss that a little bit.
Well, I definitely miss it, but I'm wondering, there's a couple of things there that I wanted to come out. One is, do you think Zemeckis has lost it? Because I haven't really seen anything strong as he did in the 80s.
I do think that, he, I personally would say, he came strong out of the gate with I Want to Hold Your Hand, and really, kept that strength up through about the mid 90s. As with any filmmaker, they have a heyday, they have a period of their strength. And
there are a lot of filmmakers who are continuing to make and improve the film. Christopher Nolan is one that makes really great films all the time.
Right.
There are other filmmakers that make great films. Clint Eastwood had an amazingly long career, still making film. So I mean, I just, I do like posing that question.
Mm-hmm.
When does one have their peak period, and are they able to sustain it, or do they fade into the background? And as a septuagenarian, you're constantly asking those kinds of questions of yourself. So that's one of the questions that I would ask of that. The other comment that I wanted to make was, you're absolutely right. I think Michael, what's his name again? Anyways, when he pulls that thing off his head, he does it in such a slapstick, understated way that it just works so well. And it adds a lot to the character. I mean, if he just pulled it off, it would have been one thing. But the way that he did it, really it was significant to me. You're nodding your head, Alexis.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like to Mel's point, he's a great actor. I really like him as a person as well. Incredibly likable. I don't think I've ever seen anything he's in and been like, wow, I didn't like Michael J. Fox in that. I will like him in no matter what he's in.
Did you see Doc Hollywood?
Yes, it doesn't matter. I just really like him as a person, and I appreciate what he does now too for people, people with Parkinson's and what have you. So I also have a very strong connection to Back to the Future. It's like one of my dad's favorite movies ever. So just growing up, I watched basically all the movies that we're going to talk about tonight, but Back to the Future is one of my favorites. And it just despite being a child of the 90s, early 2000s, it evokes this very distinct nostalgia, specifically, when they're dealing with the DeLorean and the JCPenney parking lot. JCPenney doesn't even exist anymore, at least not in Massachusetts, which oh my God. Malls are severely dead. It just evokes all these deep things for me. So I just I appreciate the humor, but the touch of sad nostalgia that Back to the Future evokes, at least for me. So
well, I think that the nostalgia bit is a little double-edged on the sword, because what they're also doing is they're showing the 50s as being very idyllic.
Yep.
And that nostalgia is really rose-colored, because it wasn't that. I mean, I remember the 50s.
There is that one scene with the trunk of the car, the musicians in the trunk of the car, where they hint at something that's just the slightest twinge of racial tension there. But yeah.
And smoking dope and doing some naughty things like that, but they were naughty. They weren't really bad. They didn't have any gravitas at all to it.
Right.
But our next film had very little gravitas as well, and still became a cultural touchstone. And we're talking about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And here's a clip about. And I have to. I'll preface this by saying our director, Mark Sherwood, who's behind the scenes here, loves this clip because it explains time so well. Here is Back to the Future. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
How'd it go? Bad. Our historical figures are all locked up, and my dad won't let them out.
Can we get your dad's keys?
We could steal them, but he lost them 2 days ago.
Only we could go back in time to when he had them and steal them then.
Well, why can't we?
Because we don't got time.
We could do it after the report. Ted, good thinking, dude. After the report, we'll time travel back to 2 days ago, steal your dad's keys, and leave them here. Where? I don't know. How about behind that sign? That way, when we get here now, they'll be waiting for us. See? Whoa, yeah! So, after the report, we can't forget to do this, otherwise it won't happen. But it did happen. Hey, it was me who stole my dad's keys. Exactly, Ted. Come on. Mom?
Yes.
Can you please bring the car around back?
Sure.
Come on, Ted. We've got some historical figures to rescue.
I love the fact that the Napoleon character was starting to put the moves on his mom in the car.
Oh, he's such a sleazeball in this movie, and I love that so much. Conquer, conquer, conquer.
It is a delightful film, and it's charming, and it's a great comedy, and it really harkens to a lot of comedies from the 30s and stuff like that. But I've always been a little disturbed by the fact that I felt that it ushered in the era of like stupid stoners who are able to like succeed in life just by getting stoned and being good dudes, you know? I don't think it works that way. I don't know. What do you think, Alexis?
I mean, I do agree. I do think it kind of like gently ushers that genre in. But I don't know. I kind of, with this movie, I haven't seen it in ages, but with this movie, I kind of like suspend my reality, and I'm like, you know what? I'm glad that they succeed.
Well, it really is a classic comedy bit when you
It's
think
just so wholesome and positive. It's like I want to be that wholesome and positive. I'm
oh,
not.
you are.
But that like just completely elated with every word I say. I've never seen Keanu more happy. So it's just, you know, I really do love this film. And I really appreciate like how optimistic and just positive it is, despite it being, yeah, it is kind of just like two stoners. But there's something very lovable about how positive they are and how optimistic.
Well, stoners can be lovable, you know.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can. That is true.
We all know one or two in our lifetime.
I know a couple.
As a guy, one of the things that I like about it is Diane Franklin is in this. She played one of the historical princesses, and I don't know if you remember Diane Franklin, but she was in a couple of comedies. One with
Was she in Better Off Dead too?
That's it. Better Off Dead. She was in Better Off Dead, and she was very good at accents. She played a French girl in that one. But you know, she's incredibly cute, and apparently she started the curly hair thing in the 80s. So again, you know, the 80s films really were pushing some of the styles and things like that. Go ahead, Mel. You had something to say?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, talk about a movie that is so of its time. It's like this folds in mall culture. It folds in valley culture. It's just like, there's the music is so representative of what, you know, the synth heavy sound that kind of dominated parts of the 80s. So yeah, in terms of like, just like a little time capsule, a really fun time capsule. This is a really interesting film in that it's also a time travel movie. Time travel, time capsule. Yeah.
You know, a lot of bad things happened in the 80s. I mean, when you really sit back and think about it, AIDS happened in the 80s. There was the Challenger disaster happened in the 80s. And John Lennon was assassinated in the 80s.
Yeah.
And all of those kind of shook us.
Yeah.
You know, each one of those I mean, I remember when the Challenger disaster happened, I felt, you know, I felt it personally. And when John Lennon, you know, I know exactly where I was when John Lennon died or was assassinated. Do we start to see any of those shaking things in our zeitgeist affecting the movies that we're talking about?
Well, I mean, I think you can definitely see it in a film like Brazil.
Yeah.
This sort of dystopian, authoritarian state. Yeah, I think that Also, let's think about films that aren't on this list. In fact, because they were made for television, The Day After in
Yeah.
the US and Threads in the
Oh my
UK.
God.
I know, right?
Oh my God. I try to like push that out of my memory. It's
Yeah,
never going away. So yeah, Threads.
exactly. So it's interesting in that, you know, there's very much this escapist entertainment
Yeah.
aspect of the 80s, but there's also this, you know, no, we're going to look at the reality as close as much as we can.
There's also like Rambo too. I mean, talking about
Yes.
like psychological, you know, scars from war and just being completely tossed aside despite serving your country. Um, yeah, that comes to mind when I think of some of the dark themes that are explored too.
But part of the opposite side of those kind of disasters that shake our zeitgeist is a look to escape from all of that to go back to another time, which I think we're also seeing in our political environment right now.
Yeah.
And so the films are reflecting that kind of like innocence, that kind of uh, gaiety, and so I think it shows both sides. I think the 80s are really ripe with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And our next film, to me, really kind of represents that Reagan dour and gloom. Although I know many Republicans, adore and revere him as a god, I've always found Ronald Reagan as to be a bad actor doing a bad acting job. And here is a clip from that movie. It's called "The Empire Strikes Back." It was a small indie film, but we chose this particular scene primarily because I think it also says a lot about what the '80s conflicts was all about. Here's Empire Strikes Back.
What's going on, buddy? You're being put into carbon freeze.
What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me.
The Empire will compensate you if he dies. Put him in.
I'm not ready to die!
Hey! Listen to me! Chewie! Chewie, this won't help me! Hey! Save your strength. There'll be another time. The princess. You have to take care of her.
You hear me? Huh?
I love you.
I know.
And it's again the sound, John Williams score.
Oh, the swell when Han and Leia kiss. I'm such a nerd for that. It's just so good.
But that swell is classic Ernst Kornfeld and all those other guys from the 30s and 40s who did the music. Max Steiner, all those guys, really reminiscent of that. But in our pre-show, Alexis, you were talking about how that was one of your favorite scenes.
Oh, it's just for some reason, again, my dad is a huge 80s person, like just very, very passionate. So I think I first saw the original Star Wars movies when I was about 5. So it's been a lifelong, thank you, Father, for showing me all these fantastic films. So it's been like a long ingrained into me. I think I've seen that scene specifically like thousands of times. I'm almost 30, so it's been a couple of years of seeing it. There's just something about it. It's just very, it's like a mix between like romantic and disturbing, and it's just very, very powerful scene. And again, John Williams' score is just unmatched, just stunning music.
Mel?
I love when a big bells and whistles sci-fi movie can have a scene with such emotional resonance,
Yeah.
that to me is it separates the wheat from the chaff. It's like, because to your point, what you said earlier, with without strong characters, without that strong writing, in this case, I know Lawrence Kasdan was one of the screenwriters.
His peak.
At his peak, I was going to say that,
Yeah.
actually. I think that when you have that, that's just, it's the thing that will make someone introduce their kids to it. It's the thing that it's just like, it's not just a throwaway popcorn movie. It's something that's going to stay with you.
Yeah.
It's a great romance, and they do it. And the fact that the "I know" was an ad lib makes it even better. And according to the stories and the myths that surround it, Ford was just thinking about, what would I really say in a case like this? And so, but it's also a very dark story. I mean, it is about an empire. It is about evil. It is about too much control, and it is also about people rebelling. And I am convinced that so many of the people who watched that film as kids in the 80s are actually acting out some of that right now in the political sphere that we are in right now, where they think that they are the rebels and that they're fighting an evil empire. Either way, whether it's left versus right or right versus left, that's how we see it. We're seeing in that kind of black and white, and that's it. And this is an example of where that black and white has really dominated the screen, and now maybe even the scene. Or again, am I just blowing a lot of gas?
I mean, I think, like, if we want to get like down and dirty with it, I'll just be super open.
Yes, we do want to get down and dirty. We like getting down and dirty, Alexis. You should know that by now.
I'm quite vocal. So, I mean, when Trump was voted out for the first time and Biden and Harris won, I don't know if you guys ever saw that video that went around, because Mark Hamill, I think, shared it, and someone had edited the celebration score by John Williams from the in my opinion, the final film. At the end of the final film, when Vader and the Empire falls, that score, that celebratory, amazing score, and they put it over like the entirety of the world celebrating Biden's win and Trump's defeat. And I just remember at that time being so incredibly elated, and that it just rang so true to good versus evil, and just almost like having that music from a film that I love, and I always see it as fighting against fascism. It just rang really poignantly with me, and it really touched me, and I'll never forget seeing that video and just being like, oh my god, this is so accurate. So that's just my little take on it. But I don't see Star Wars in any other light than good versus evil, the fighting fascism and doing what's right for people, no matter what.
Yeah, and I just want to add, with the whole Yoda storyline, trust the experts. Take advantage of the knowledge that already exists and learn from it and be strong from it. And as we're in a time right now where knowledge is kind of being cast to the side, and devalued, that's another part that rings for me now.
I tend to agree with you on that. And I got to kind of mull some of that over. We'll probably have to have another conversation about this at that particular one, when I finally get my senses together and come up with a good parry for you. Our next film was supposed. I found this out recently. It started out to be a horror film, and then became something. Oh, this story, Alexis?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. It's so cool.
Do you want to do the intro?
You
can do the intro, and when you're done with your story, and say, "Here is the clip," and Mark will play it. Come on, do it.
It was supposed to be. It's supposed to be a film called Night Skies about an alien invasion, and the aliens are invading Elliot's house, but they decided not to go with it, and Steven Spielberg decided not to go with it. I just thought it was really cool. Yeah, that's basically all I know.
Now you say,
Oh, Mark, please roll the clip. This is from ET.
I am not paying for fraud.
Be good. Be good. Stay here, stay. And don't tell anybody. No, nobody. Be good. Be good.
Oh, God!
Elliot.
What?
Elliot. I taught him how to talk now. He can talk now. Elliot. Look what he brought up here all by himself. Elliot. What's he need this stuff for? Elliot. E.T., can you say that? Can you say E.T.? E.T. 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 Be good. Be good. I taught him that too. You should give him his dignity. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Phone. Phone? He said phone? He said phone? Can't you understand English? He said phone. Home.
so is ET us looking for our home? Is that one of the things that we pull away from that we are all lost souls in this universe and we try and just find our way home?
You kind of see that with the character of Keys in ET. Guy is lonely as hell, and he's like just trying to like search for this life, this deeper meaning of life and life beyond this planet. And yeah, I don't think that's too far fetched, Garen. I tend to agree with you.
And
Al?
maybe a sense of belonging,
Yeah,
as well.
Okay, so if we go back to what we were talking about before, that in the 80s, because of the tragedies that befell us by the changing of the culture and all those other things, we're feeling a little unmoored.
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah.
can we say that and feel comfortable saying that, and that the film supports that?
Yeah, and I do think, it kind of ties into the whole Spielberg filmography of very much being rooted in film history, but also trying to create real entertainment, but that also has some meaning to it. And so I think with Spielberg, at least at this point in his career, he was, I think, really more focused on the comfort, the entertainment, the comfort. I mean, obviously, there's that later chase and search and threat from the government. I do think that definitely ties into the distrust of the government that came out of the 80s and out of the Reagan administration. Well, no, actually, you could go back to the 70s for that, but
Oh,
I
it's been
will,
building. It's been
yeah,
building since Vietnam.
I will say that if I had to note one thing about the 80s and an aesthetic in film at that time, it's the Spielberg sky. And you see it in E.T. and some of his other films, Close Encounters, obviously, but then you also saw it in the films he kind of had a hand in, like Poltergeist.
are you saying like the sky, Mel? Like,
Yeah,
I
his
mean, you see
skies.
that in Jaws. I mean,
Yeah.
Jaws is like there's like a whole like comet shower, like when they're on Quint's boat, and there's just like, I mean, and I think it was natural. Like I think it just naturally happened, but there's some incredible shots in Jaws too.
So what does that mean that he is populating his background with the sky?
I mean, for me, I think it points to an inherent sense of optimism. He's always looking upward.
He does have a distinct sense of hope, and I don't think I've ever come away from a Steven Spielberg movie and been like, wow, I feel completely hopeless.
That reminds me of a PSA that played on TV in the late 50s and early 60s that was for environmental purposes, and everyone was looking to the sky, and this little character was looking to the earth to kind of replant trees and stuff like that. I wonder if Spielberg ever saw that. Let's ask him the next time we see him. Anyways, it's time now to do our honorable mentions. And again, one of the problems that we had with the 80s was there's so many great films that we thought. And, so here are just, a handful of really good films that we've talked about before, but should be on everyone's must-see sci-fi 80s film list. And here are our honorable mentions for this episode. So our honorable mentions are Brazil, Road Warrior, Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, and Blade Runner. And I have to say, I absolutely love Dr. Emilio Lizardo, especially when he's putting electricity on his tongue.
Okay, so now I have to share two personal life stories. I don't know if I can top Alexis's, but number one, no matter where you go, there you are was in my high school yearbook write-up. Because I was like, I felt like that, that was a phrase that really spoke to me. Also, my dad was an early adopter, has been for a long time in terms of tech. And I distinctly remember him putting in the video disc of Road Warrior. And that's in our living room, and that's how I saw it for the first time. Is with that big
video disc. And so he had a laser
no,
disc.
This was he did, but this was pre-laser disc. This is when they came in big plastic sleeves, almost like albums, and you kind of stuck them in, and then the disc would come out in the machine, and you pull it out from there. So that one, what does it say that my dad thought it was really important that I saw, Road Warrior at the age of the 14?
And you've been warped ever since, and we thank him for that. We thank him for that.
No, that's so badass. I love that. It's hilarious. That's incredible.
Well, Brazil is one of my favorite films too. I just love the darkness of it all, and and I always think about Buttle and Tuttle and the little bug that created all that difference. And I think about that now in our current political situation when we have people sent to El Salvador and they don't know where they are.
Yep.
It's like really, and this film was from the 80s, and now we're in the the 2020s. So it's like, wow, it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed.
No. It's like life imitates art in the worst possible way. And I actually was talking about that whole Buttle Tuttle thing last week in relation to what's happening, the current events you're noting.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really sad.
Yeah.
Our last film on this list is something that I believe was really way ahead of its time, and that is John Carpenter's The Thing. And I think there's so much in this film that bespeaks of what was very dark in the 80s. Let's take a look at a scene from The Thing from John Carpenter.
This is bullshit, Mac.
Finish it, Palmer.
They're dead, Mac.
Windows. Go. You tie up Palmer over here. We're gonna draw a little bit of everybody's blood. Because we're gonna find out who's the thing. Watching Norris in there gave me the idea that maybe every part of him was a whole. Every little piece was an individual animal with a built-in desire to protect its own life. You see, when a man bleeds, it's just tissue. The blood from one of you things won't obey when it's attacked. It'll try and survive. Crawl away from a hot needle, say.
Hot needles. Sounds nice. What? Mel, you must have seen this film at least a couple of times.
I have.
Oh yeah, many.
What is the draw?
Wow, that's rough.
Yeah.
Because there's so much. I mean, you know, the pan across that cast, it's like you've got TJ Carter, you've got Keith David, Wilford Brimley, and obviously Kurt Russell, who, you know, was essentially John Carpenter's muse for a bit. So just and it's all them. It's all them. It's them, the isolation and the effects, the threat. And I think that
we should note that the effects are practicals.
Yeah.
And the effects are practical.
They're not CGIs.
And I remember the outcry over how gory and disturbing that movie was when it was released. And the thing is, it's still gory and disturbing.
Oh, yeah.
It holds up exceptionally well. And part of it is that, yes, the everything about this production was top notch, and that it speaks to a fear that is that is evergreen, and that is that you cannot trust your neighbor, that when you're isolated, that you have no backup. And I just, yeah, gosh.
Well, there's also the other one is that, you know, you don't know who is what.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Know? And so you can't trust anybody. It's sort of like to me, that strikes me a lot of what the ethos of zombies are, because zombies, anyone could be a zombie. It could be your mother, and she's going to kill you and eat you, you know? So, and I think that strikes to the very core. There's no family. There's nothing holding you together. You are alone in an icy, frigid world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that resonates right now.
Good. I'm sorry?
That kind of resonates right now, but
it kind of resonates right now. And I think that that fear is aberrant. I think it's a fear that comes with deprivation of some sort, because if there is no deprivation, we are much more willing to be accepting, and we're much more willing to embrace other people. Otherwise, we would be breaking apart left and right more than we are, say, right now. I mean, that's my theory about it. Again, you know, where does that take us, and where does that leave us in terms of like understanding where we are now and where we were?
The thing about me, like with the ending of the thing, is just MacReady and Childs are just in the snow, in the burning outpost, and you just have no idea what's going to happen to them. And I don't mean to be hopeless, but it feels, I kind of feel like MacReady and Childs in a burning outpost right now with the current situation, where it's like you almost just don't know what's going to happen, and it's terrifying. So to Mel's point, to me, this film feels evergreen in so many ways, but the ending of The Thing has always struck me specifically because I think McCready's like, let's just wait here a while, and it just pans out, and you're like, oh my god, and it kind of feels that way right now.
What else can you do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
is we put The Thing last for a variety of reasons. I think it's one of the more important films of the 80s. And again, as you just said, Mel, I think and Alexis, it's evergreen. It's going to be around forever. You
Yeah.
know, it's it's always fresh, and it always seems fresh, and there's doing. But is hopelessness, which seems to be its final note, is that what we are taking away from the 80s? The hopelessness of it all.
I think this is going to sound kind of like an oxymoron, but I think where there's hopelessness, there's hope. Look at what we're seeing with Star Wars. I mean, that like the hope that's implemented throughout Star Wars gives me, it sounds like a total dork, which I am, but it gives me
You
exceeding
forgot the
amounts of
adorable
hope.
part.
Thank
You're an
you,
adorable dork.
Thank you.
Adorable.
It adorable, if you will. It gives me immense amounts of hope, to see that. And we've, in the past, we've seen, quote unquote, empires rise and fall, and it will keep doing that. And I think we just need to have hope, really. So I try, despite the 80s having films like The Thing where we end on a quite hopeless note, I think there's plenty of them, where we see hope really rise in Star Wars and ET, stuff like that. That's just my takeaway from it.
Mel, what's your takeaway from it?
So I wanted to double check the day before I said this, but I mean, you think about how Carpenter, a later Carpenter 80s film, They Live, and that does have a successful uprising. And it's really interesting that the moment where it all becomes clear what's going on is broadcast on TV. And Ronald Reagan was he was a screen presence. And so I do feel like ultimately what Alexis is saying, that, there was a hope that good would prevail, that the evil that infiltrated would be revealed for what it is.
I also thought that, first of all, two things about John Carpenter and They Live. They Live, I really thought Kurt Russell should have played the lead role. I think that would have been a much stronger film. But the other thing is, I'm not sure that any of these films had a lot of hope in it. I think that there's even the more optimistic ones were optimistic in a way that, I mean, E.T. is optimistic, but it's still separation. There's still, a lot of trauma going on.
There's a lot of trauma in E.T. There's like a lot to
there's
unpack.
a lot of trauma going on. I remember I was dating a woman who had a 7-year-old boy, and I bought him E.T. as on a Blu-ray disc as a present, and he gave it back to me saying, "I'm not old enough for this."
Is it because he watched the government doctor segment? Because I'm not recovered from that.
I think it just struck some fear in him.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about, things like the value of fairy tales and how fairy tales are used and to instruct kids. So I'm not. Well, let's ask this question: is there a legacy that you two agree on about the 80s sci-fi films? And the answer is no.
They make me nostalgic as hell. Does that count as a legacy?
No, that's a really interesting question, because you know what? The 80s is a big question. People are going back to the 80s films for it. And I think part of that is that they're very simple, direct stories.
Well, look at like modern horror is really reconnecting back with the 80s. There's tons of horror fiction books that are coming out this summer that are slasher prom night, and it's like, damn, I want to read that. And it's stylized like the 80s. Stranger Things, some people like that. They like the aesthetic, they like the simplicity of going back to this era, or what they perceived to be was the simplicity of the era. So
Mel?
So it's hard for me to say, because I feel like it reflected the era in that it had that, fatalism. I don't know if it had, it ultimately, the fatalism won out, because it was fatalism with a neon candy colored sensibility.
That's just the wrapping.
That's true.
That's just the wrapping, yeah. But you know what? We're going to do more in the 80s. And we're going to pick this conversation up again, because I think it's a very, very deep field to play around with. And right now we're running out of time. And I want to know, Alexis, what else are you working on these days that we can shamelessly pimp you?
Ooh, I don't know. Working on some fiction stuff right now.
Are you writing a book on horror, by the way?
It's like a horror cyberpunk. It's a long, the building world takes a long time, so it's been a work in progress. I think I've talked about it like for at least the last year, so it's taking some time. But when I'm not, doing the day job and stuff like that, I try to work on that. And then, like I said, a bunch of fun kind of horror stuff coming out soon. So I'm excited to be reviewing that. Yeah, so maybe I can try and see if Oscar will also let me cover the Jaws 50th anniversary in Martha's Vineyard, trying to see if we can get eyes over there. So
going to Martha's Vineyard is always fun,
Yeah, especially when, talking about Jaws. So yeah, hopefully covering some fun stuff for the Hassle this summer, and, helping out at Boston Sci-Fi where I can as well, helping Mel out and stuff. So yeah, all good stuff.
Great. And Mel, now that you're working with Boston Sci-Fi on a more regular basis, and soon to be even more regular, what do you think we're going to end up doing? Do you think we're going to have a really good SF-51?
I am the optimistic side of the 80s. Yes, I think, SF50 was such a high. We had, solid turnout. We had some really great filmmakers. We had some terrific films, and we got a lot of really positive feedback from the filmmakers who were able to join us, that they, that they felt welcomed and taken care of, and, and the fact that we also showed an Oscar winner. I love that, with the short film, I'm Not a Robot. So I have really high hopes for next year. And
Good.
I think that, and I think that, it's even going to grow more from there.
Great. Good stuff. All right, folks, thank you for joining us. If you like our conversation, please like it on wherever you're seeing this on YouTube, or whether you're hearing it as a podcast. Comment. We love comments. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel or any other place like that. And if you have any ideas about what we should be talking about, drop us a line. Let us know what we should be talking about. We love spending it. We have smart people talking about sci-fi films, and hopefully we're not talking about the same old, same old. So my name is Garen Daly. Thank you very much. Find us on YouTube. Find us on Facebook. Find us on IG. Find us in all the places that everyone has to be these days. And I want to thank Mark Sherwood, our director, and Irene Light, who is our producer, for doing a great job. Thank you very much. And of course, our two outstanding guests, Alexis and Melissa. Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you. Oh yeah, our outgoing banner is we're going to be doing at some point down in the future this on 70 sci-fi films. So we're going to be doing decade by decade must-see films. So here is a clip put together by our director, Mark Sherwood.